So now we're going to be chatting, and we can just turn on the mic whenever we feel like it.
So the thing is, something really funny.
Yes.
That you agree with.
Yes. Oh, this is going to be a good show. This is going to be a really, really good show. Talking about anxiety. All right, let's get ready. Whoop. Hey, what's up, guys? This is Chris Shepard, and you are on the Love Systems live stream. Thank you for showing up.
Derek Cajun here. I'm excited we have a really great show today. Very excited. Very, very excited. We're talking about anxiety and all the different forms of anxiety, how it comes up, how to deal with it, and how to avoid it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be a real good one.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about approach anxiety, the feeling guys get when, let's say, you're interested in a woman and you want to talk to her, you want to start a conversation, but there's something holding you back. It's a big problem. A lot of guys have it. I used to have it. But we're also going to be talking about anxiety in general because it's like a major issue, right? I think it's
a huge issue. Yeah.
Anxiety is such it's so common. It restricts people so much. It causes such a reduction in people's quality of life, and it really affects men in dating. I think that's a big issue in dating.
It's one of those things too. It's really pervasive. Like it's a lot of the times the issues that guys have has a lot more to do with anxiety than it does about other things. For instance, guys might say like, "Oh, I don't want to talk to this girl because she's too good looking, or I'm not dressed well enough to look like she'd be attracted to me." But that really is still anxiety, because it's anxiety about how you think she's going to react to you. And so I think that a lot of guys, maybe due to ego or due to their over logical processing, they decide it's for some other reason, but really it comes down to anxiety. In fact, I would say it's probably the majority of reasons why guys don't make moves.
And the other thing with this show, what makes Love Systems Live really special, is you guys, if you are here tuning in live, you're going to be able to call in, and we are going to be taking questions. So if you experience anxiety and you want to talk about it, if you have overcome anxiety and you want to tell a story about that, if you would like our advice on anxiety, because we do help guys with this stuff, feel free to ask. And we really want to have, this is the only place on the internet, this is the only place where you can have that kind of, that call-in show kind of experience where you can ask us questions as long as you're here at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Mondays when we're doing this live.
Yeah.
So we are going to be sending out a link to Google Hangouts in the chat, and if you just click that link, you're going to talk to Sarah, our assistant, and she'll get your questions ready to go on air. So it should be good.
Yeah. As always, as well, if you have any comments you want to make in the actual chat of the YouTube, just actually on YouTube in the live stream. We're going to be keeping an eye on that throughout the course of the live stream. So if you have certain questions, maybe you don't want to call in or whatever, but you want to get your feedback in there or your question, you can always do that on there as well. So go ahead and feel free to join in that.
Okay, so we already have a couple of questions coming in. We're going to start getting to those questions in just a few moments, but let's just start right on the base. We kind of went into it a little bit. What is anxiety? Why is it like a killer in dating?
Right.
Why is it important to guys?
I always thought there was 3 different types of anxiety. And the first one would be the approach anxiety, is what we usually called it. This is the anxiety to actually start an interaction with someone. So whether it be starting a conversation with someone, in a bar, let's say, an attractive woman you see in the bar, maybe it's even at a house party or at a work event or something like that, just making an introduction, talking conversation with someone. And then
Go on.
The second type of anxiety is the escalation anxiety. So it comes from when you're having that friendly interaction and how you take that and go into something more. This is where a lot of guys can deal with the initial anxiety, let's say. At least a lot of, let's say, natural guys that can get over that. But the escalation anxiety is where a lot of guys have trouble too, because that's where you get into the friend zone. So you don't have a problem, let's say, starting in a friendly sort of way of speaking to them. But then when you have to get out of that, that's when there's some more anxiety. And the last one is sexual anxiety. When it goes from, you're okay with flirting with her and you've talked to her and now you're flirting together, but now you got to go even further. So maybe she's giving you eyes and you're noticing, but in your head you're thinking, oh no, does that mean I got to make a move, or should I do it now? Is this too risky? So it's that anxiety right there when you need to sort of turn it into a sexual kind of thing. So those are the 3 things. I think there's a lot of other aspects of anxiety that happen in other situations that maybe not even as part of dating, but as far as dating is concerned, I think those are the 3 big areas that guys tend to have trouble with.
Cool. All right. So what we got? Another thing that I realized with anxiety, and I think you're really right by saying it's like there's sort of three places where guys get hung up on anxiety.
Yeah.
It's starting the conversation. It's showing your intentions and actually, flirting or escalating, and then a lot of the time it's around sex.
Yeah.
And a lot of time I think guys get this anxiety in part, especially at the sexual end of things.
Yeah.
They get that anxiety. It comes from our culture, right? It comes from the fact that that our culture does, it sort of shames male sexuality. Even if a woman likes you, you're led to believe that women want flowers and romance rather than sexual interests. And the fact is, if she likes you a lot, then she probably wants both, right? And you shouldn't feel like you're asking for something that she's not going to want. You shouldn't feel like women don't like sex, because if you feel like women don't like sex, then you're always going to feel like you're doing something shameful when you make a move or when you escalate, even if she likes you, even if she's all over, even if she's like, for frick's sakes, like, hit on me already.
Yeah.
Which is often the case. And so that, comes from our culture. There's also like the idea of don't talk to strangers, again, which, carries shame with it. The idea that, you see a woman in a bar and there's something wrong with the idea of going up and talking to her like a normal person. And I think, it's really helpful when you get over that sort of culturally ingrained belief that a lot of guys have.
It's in the media too. You always see these movies that it's like where the guy gets the girl and these storylines they have. And this is always, me and Chris have talked this before, where you get these guys that in reality, they would never ever get attraction from a woman, or especially never get the girl. But they're sort of like, the shy guy that doesn't say a lot, but secretly has all these thoughts that are very, involved and it has a big crush on a girl. And then in some storyline that the writer of this film made up, she sees that and is, inexplicably attracted to him, and the nice guy gets the girl, and you see a lot of movies like that where the nice guy gets the girl. I mean, to be honest, nothing against being nice. I think being nice is fine, but the way in which those storylines carry out, I think, sends the wrong message to guys, where they think that, it's always the assholes, that make the move and that are communicate their intent. Whereas, if I just play my cards right and kind of keep them close to my chest and be nice and be polite, then eventually a girl's going to notice who I am, and that's when things are going to happen. And that might happen, but it would be a rare thing if it did. At least, if you go through your life thinking that some girl's going to notice that, you're not doing the right. That's not the right tactic. Anyway, but you see Hollywood movies do that all the time, where it's the shy guy that some girl inexplicably comes up and is just sort of like, hey, tell me about you. What's your story? I don't know why, but I'm attracted to you. It's because probably the writer of that film was the shy, nice guy, and this is sort of his big way of dealing with that, is to write a movie in which the nice guy gets the girl. And the truth
Wish
is,
fulfillment fantasy.
Yeah, exactly.
So one thing, a lot of guys are asking, like, what is anxiety? Where does my anxiety come from? And how do I get rid of it? Like, because people who have anxiety feel like they don't control it.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't feel like a feeling or emotion. It feels like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like this is impossible. It feels like I'm going to get hurt or embarrassed or something bad is going to happen. So how do you recognize when anxiety is holding you back, and how do you get over anxiety? I have some thoughts on this, but I want to talk about it first.
My big thing with that is that anyone that says they can get rid of anxiety, I think is fooling themselves, because you can't get rid of anxiety. It's not going to happen. What you can do is you can conquer it, and that's a better goal, because to sort of believe that you can exist in a place where you never have anxiety is foolish. It's never going to happen. It's kind of like, we've always compared it to the high dive at the pool, in that when you go to the high dive the first time, if you've never been on the high dive before, you get up there, you climb the ladder, and you finally see, maybe if you're down at the bottom, you think, oh, that doesn't look so high. But you get up there and you look down and you're like, oh my God, this is really high, especially those of you that have, fear of heights. And then it takes a lot of nerve to finally, even if you manage to jump off. But then, after you do it, it's not so hard to do it again. It's literally, as soon as you land in the water, swim back out and do it again. You may still get a little bit of anxiety when you go up the second time. You're like, oh yeah, I forgot, this is kind of scary. But you jump off and it's fun. And then, usually after the second or third time, you can do it all day long. But you don't go to the pool for 2 weeks, and you go back, and then anxiety comes back as much as it did the very first time you went off that high dive. Maybe not as much, but let's say 80% of the way there. And the truth is, and this comes from 10 years of doing this, Chris and I, each, it never goes away. It never, ever, ever goes away. But one thing you can do is you can sort of remember all the times that you conquered it. And if you have that, I've always said that being a man means being able to control that voice in your head that tells you not to do things, and being able to do things despite that voice. I think that's what being a man is, in very plain terms. So when you're able to sort of hear that voice in your head that says, don't do it, you're going to get hurt, this is bad, your ability to overcome that voice is, I think, the big skill set you need to learn. And that's what I think dealing with anxiety is. It's not about getting rid of it, it's about conquering it. So that's my thoughts on it.
I absolutely agree. And I think if you want to understand, if you want to even break it down a little bit deeper, because I read a lot of psychology stuff, right? Yeah. As you do as well. But one of the things, I read up a lot about anxiety because, in my classes I get all kinds of guys who have anxiety. It's the number one thing, even with confident people who are confident 99% of their lives. You put them in an unfamiliar situation, they get anxious, and you get guys who you can tell them exactly what to do, you give them a complete formula, and they wouldn't do it because they're not ready inside emotionally. But what I realized, what I found out, is what anxiety, where it comes from. And it breaks down into two, you can break anxiety down into two parts. Let me ask you something. What's the difference between anxiety and fear?
I guess anxiety...
Because they're similar, right?
They're very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. That's a hard question.
What's the difference between anxiety and fear? That's the rhetorical question.
Yeah.
And think about it for a little bit. And when you think about it, here's the difference. Fear is you got a big hairy spider in front of you. Okay? That's fear. You're afraid of that big hairy spider because it's right there in front of you. All right? And anxiety is when that spider crawls away and disappears into the wall, and now you don't know where the spider is.
Okay.
Right? So fear is a danger in front of you.
A known threat and an unknown threat kind of thing, or is it?
Exactly. It's the potential danger that you don't know how big a risk it is. Where is the spider?
Right.
There's a poisonous spider somewhere. Maybe it died as soon as it went in the wall. Maybe it's going to come out in the middle of the night. And so anxiety is actually harder to deal with than fear. Because fear, you can always say, you can take precautions against fear. And you can confront your fear. Basically, you can confront your fear pretty easily. But you can't necessarily confront your anxiety because the anxiety is around the potential, the maybe. And so the two parts of anxiety are you've got that fear, and then you've got that your brain wants to control it, right? I'm getting anxious because I want to know where that spider is in my house. Where is the spider? And I can't find out where the spider is, and so, but I can't just go, oh, never mind, I can't forget about the spider because it still might be there. And so your brain starts spinning, right? It's trying to solve the fear. It's trying to figure it out, but it can't, and just goes on and on and on. And so, if you want to confront anxiety, there's two ways you can go about it. One is confronting the fear itself, so you're not afraid of the underlying problem. The other thing is confronting your need to control the fear and accepting that bad things are going to happen. And that's basically, that's a big part of when you're talking about game or in dating, if you want to be brave, if you want to be confident, big part of that is, you control all the variables, you try to do your best job, but at the end of the day, you walk into a social situation, you take the risk that you're going to look like a doofus, and you accept that risk. And that's why I think jumping off the high off the cliff or jumping off the high board at the diving at the pool, you get that feeling of control, right? When you do that, when you've done it numerous times, and that's what makes you feel more comfortable with it.
It's the conquering of the fear, and you know the outcome at that point.
Exactly, and you know that even if things go bad, even if I slip, I'm going to be all right. But you get a little bit of that feeling of control.
Yeah, I think that if you don't mind me adding to this, I've always said that. Sorry, not me, but I think a lot of people that have studied this more than I have always said that all fear comes down to the unknown, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think most, if not all cases, it's always the unknown. The analogy I always used was the UFC fighter, which was, if you ask a UFC fighter, who's that really popular Irish UFC fighter? What's his name? The lightweight guy.
Conor
McGregor. If you ask Conor McGregor, hey Conor, are you afraid to get punched in the face? How do you think you would answer that, right? And I've asked guys this, and most guys, if you're watching, you watch UFC, your answer to that is of course not. He's going to be like, no, of course not. But the question is, why would he not be scared of being punched in the face? Because if you think of it logically, he should be, right? Because he's getting into a situation in which he has probably seen a lot of people, like in the UFC, get really hurt getting punched in the face. Permanently damaged. Yeah. Brain damage, messed up faces, all this sort of stuff. He's willingly going into the ring with someone that can do that kind of damage to him. He's going into a place where he's more than likely, if not 100%, going to get hit in the face by people that are trained to be the best in the world at that. So why would he not be scared of being punched in the face, right? And the answer is not because he doesn't think that those things could happen to him. The answer is because he's already been punched in the face thousands of times. So when he thinks of getting punched in the face, his brain has thousands of examples to reference of what that would be like. And that's why he's not scared of it. The unknown portion of that fear has now been eliminated. So fear isn't really a logical thing. Some people say, I'm scared of I'm scared of this situation because I feel like there's a good chance I'm going to be rejected, or there's a good chance I'm going to get a negative outcome from this. Well, it's not really the negative outcome that's the scary thing. It's the unknown portion of that. It's the fact that you don't know what's really going to happen. So we've always said, not only with dating, but with anything in life, whether it's taking risks at your job, with women, within your social group, or what have you, it's about sort of accepting the fact that a negative outcome could happen and doing it despite that. And one of the best quotes I ever heard about this, which I've not been able to find, I've Googled it, I remember it for sure reading this, but it was Bruce Lee, where he said in his book Tao Jeet Kune Do, which I couldn't find in there anymore, which was the way to be rid of the disease is to be one with it. And the idea behind that, I think it's an old Taoist mantra or quote or something, but the idea is that the only way to sort of be to get over a fear is to accept that the inevitable is going to happen to you. The thing you fear most is going to happen.
You got to give up that control.
You give up the control, exactly what you said, which is what made me realize, or made me remember that. And that is the thing. Like whenever I remember when I first started with this, talking to girls, it was not that I convinced myself that the negative outcome wasn't going to happen. It was that I accepted that it was going to happen, and that's what truly allowed me to sort of deal with it. It wasn't convincing myself it wasn't. It was accepting that it was. And so that's what, a lot of the time we teach guys this, you need to fall in love with the process. You need to be okay with that inevitable negative outcome. And if you can accept that, that's the first step towards dealing with the fear and the anxiety, I would say.
That's some good stuff. I want to get a question here. We got some people in the Google Hangouts ready to ask questions. We got one guy who says, we already answered his question. So here's a question. All right. Somebody said, I'd like to know the best mindset for that first approach of the day. For the first time, let's say you meet a woman, how do you get in that social kind of vibe where you're confronting your anxieties and you're being outgoing and you're talking to people?
Yeah.
What's some advice for that, Derek?
I would say there's a number of different ways you can take with this. For me, it's always been about sort of being social. So my thing was not like, I'm going to go up to this girl and try to hit on her. I think whenever you go out, if you have the outcome that you're looking to sort of to win something, like you have that sort of, what's it called? Like where there's a winners and losers or whatever. If you're taking that approach to it where it's like, I want to win at this, or I don't want to lose by getting rejected, you're setting yourself up for disaster. And the best way to look at it is sort of just, I'm going to go and I'm just going to have fun. And an example I used earlier today when I answered a similar question to this was was that you need to fall in love with the process. Fall in love with the fact that you're probably going to get rejected, but that is actually an opportunity to learn a lot more than if it went well. So the way that I equated it was kind of like when you're on the roller coaster and you're going up the climb. The climb isn't fun on a roller coaster, right? You're like, but you know what it leads to. You know it leads to a big sort of, downfall where that's where the fun is. And that's kind of how you have to see rejection. It's sort of like one of those and so there needs to be an excitement about it, that this is just one step closer to getting to the top of that peak where things really start to go well for you. So that first approach of the night should be all about you just getting into a better mood. And there should be outcome independent. Go up to a girl. The idea in my head usually is just, I'm going to go see if these people are fun and if they're having fun tonight and if they're cool. And that's usually the idea I go up to them with, is just sort of to see if they're fun to talk to. That's it.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's the thing, just trying to control, because anxiety is a bit about control.
Yeah.
When you try to control things that you can't control, you get anxious.
Yeah.
So just controlling whether people are going to like you. Because you can be the nicest person in the world. Somebody's going to just be a dickhead to you for no good reason and think and think poorly of you for no good reason.
Yeah.
And that'll make you anxious if you try to control that. But if you try to control yourself and say, I'm always acting with integrity, I'm always having fun, bringing fun, giving fun out, you can control that.
Yeah.
You can control your own emotional state. You can control the attitude that you take into every interaction and what your intentions are. And when you control that, your anxiety goes down.
There's something I notice, and many of you notice this too, the best guys at this. I've noticed you do it. I'm sure I do it all the time. People have noticed me do it. Other guys at Love Systems. Have you ever went and talked to a girl, one of the first approaches of the night, you go and talk to a girl, and you can immediately tell she's not into you, right? So you're talking to her, you can sense, her body language is off, she's like, and there's a part of you that's kind of like, oh no, I gotta save this, right? I've been in that situation so many times. Even now, someone who's supposed to be one of the best in the world at this, and I know you do it too because I've seen you do it too, I've seen all the best guys in the world do it, if they're, let's say, just not totally what we call in state. It's sort of a natural human reaction to be like, oh, I want to make sure this goes well. And you can see it. There's almost a little bit of like, oh, I need to control this a little bit. And then the better part of us kind of kicks in, and you can almost see it sometimes, the gears turning, and it's like, oh, wait, I forgot. When I try to control it, it makes it worse. And this is the thing that a lot of guys starting off don't realize. They get into that situation, and they start talking fast. They start trying to like, oh, I got to say something funny. I got to say something interesting. I got to win them over. And what they're doing is they're actually digging themselves deeper and deeper and deeper. And a lot of guys don't realize that. And the trick to getting out of this, and the trick that you'll see, I've seen Chris do it, he's seen me do it, I've seen other guys do it, is you just gotta go, oh yeah, I forgot. I have to just not give a shit at this point. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's too late and they won't like you. Sometimes not. Sometimes they'll notice that, oh, he's not acting like the guy that needs this to go well. Maybe I judged him, and he's not actually the weird guy that I thought he was initially. And you sort of relax, and she relaxes, and the interaction goes fine. And this is the big thing that a lot of guys don't realize when they start off, is they feel like they need to win them over. They need to, and the more you do that, the worse it gets. So there needs to be this acceptance, the as Chris said earlier, let go of the control. Accept the fact that it might not work. And a lot of times when you're able to do that, things go well for you. So, yeah. Awesome. We got a whole bunch of guys. We got a bunch of guys in the live stream, in the chat, sharing their stories. Okay, here's another thing we got. So we got some guys who asked some questions. We're going to get that to that in just a second. I'm also interested in stories. Yes. I don't know if you have any good stories about anxiety. Tell us about. Have you ever shit your pants, Derek? Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. I shit my pants. Yeah. I think everyone. All right. I'm 33. I think everyone, when they reach in their 30s, has at least a couple good shit your pants stories. I don't think so. Yeah, you did. Of course you did. Everyone does. To be honest, if you're asking me for a shit your pants story, I can't think of one off the top of my head, because most of the time they're just sort of like, they're not super embarrassing socially. They're just sort of like, oh, I'm home alone and I didn't trust a fart and. All right, but so going figuratively, yeah. When have you ever had like really strong anxiety? Is there any story about anxiety that?
Or held you back?
There's been situations with anxiety, I think, that are very unique to people in our position, where you have situations sometimes where you're going out and a lot of these guys look up to you because they think, oh, this is one of the best guys in the world at talking to women. And I think there's a special kind of anxiety that comes from that, because now you have to perform in an environment where people are watching you and expecting almost there needs to be a certain kind of experience that reaction you get in order for them to believe that you're this guy that you've proclaimed to be. And I think that there's been a lot of situations where I've gone out and taught where I've even felt going into situations with women thinking, oh my God, this woman is beautiful. This very well could be a situation in which these guys who are just sitting back there being like, yeah, Cajun, he's going to knock it out of the park. And I could very well disappoint them with the reaction that I get from this woman. But every single time, I've been quite good at this, and that I've always sort of been self-aware in these moments. I've sort of had to tell myself, no. As much control as you really want to have in this situation, because you have a lot more on the line than maybe most guys have, when it's not only your reputation, but maybe even your living, your profession, your job is on the line. You need to let go of control, because the more you're trying to control that situation, the worse it's going to be. So I've had situations where it's 10 o'clock at night, it's New York, we're in a really amazing bar, there's a 6-foot-tall model. One of the guys I'm with says, hey Cajun, go show me how you talk to models. And I gotta say, no problem. And I gotta walk over and I gotta do it without any hesitation. Yeah. And I'd be lying if I said that as I'm walking over there, my heart is probably beating out of my chest, the first approach of the night. And I've been lucky in that I've been able to be self-aware enough in those moments to be like, no. Just fuck it. If this goes really bad, that's okay. There's not much you can do about that. But don't try to control it. Don't try to turn this into a situation in which you're going to force this girl to like you, because that's never really going to work. So I've been lucky in that I've gone up in those situations and they've all gone pretty okay. Yeah. But it was because of that belief. And so
that's the thing. Women, they can tell when you have anxiety. Yeah. I mean, everybody can tell, right? To a certain extent. You're inhibiting yourself a little bit. It prevents you from, there's some vibe that comes off of somebody who is not anxious that an anxious person cannot replicate.
Like, I pick up on it. It's like sonar almost. It just emanates out of you like a frequency.
You're kind of like at the very least you're stiff. And women react really badly to it, but they love it when you're doing ballsy stuff and you're completely unanxious about it. Women get hot for that.
Oh yeah,
they love that.
And this is why I always got flack, because a lot of guys would be like, oh man, talk to that 10, guys judging 1 to 10 for girls. And I've always found that the actual 10s in an environment often are the sweetest, nicest women you can talk to. And I think one of the reasons is because they're almost assuming and expecting you're going to be that nervous guy with the stiff body language and the nervous energy about it. And when you're not, they find that so refreshing that they're almost overly nice to you. Much more so than, let's say, just an average-looking girl, or a girl that most of the guys are maybe hitting on that night that maybe just looks easy or is dressed provocatively or whatever. So, it's not always the case, but certainly I've seen that enough times to actually have a belief about that other guys may tease me for, other instructors. But it's true, and there's been situations where I've approached the 6'2" model who looks really unapproachable and just said, something simple like, hey, I just saw you from there and you're cute, what's your name? And had her be like, oh, hey, and just been super sweet. And it was not because what I said was anything great, it was just because my energy was sort of like, oh, this guy isn't afraid, and that's a refreshing thing. So you'd be surprised how much you can better your ability just by letting go of that fear, that anxiety. It's one of those things that when you start doing it, you realize you're so much better than you always thought you were. As long as you have the ability to let go of that fear. That's what inhibits most of us, I would say.
I have a story about my anxiety.
Okay. Sorry I didn't tell a story about actual anxiety, but yeah.
But no, my anxiety, you know what my anxiety is. I have one thing, I have one Achilles heel that I deal with, But we also have a question coming in, and I'm just gonna.
What's the question?
All right, let's get this this call going.
Oh, we got a call. Okay. Who's the call with?
We got Arnie here.
Arnie.
Let's see if we can get him on voice here. All right.
Is it working?
Who do we got here? All right. How's it going, man? Right now, we don't have you on video. Are you there?
All right, I can see you guys.
Hey, perfect.
Can you just mute your video, Arnie? Otherwise, we're gonna
Mute
get
your video.
feedback.
Yeah, we're getting feedback here. Right now, we don't have you on video. All right, cool. So, Arnie, what was the question you wanted to ask? Hey, perfect.
Oh shit.
Technical problems again.
Here we go. Here we go.
Do you want to be on video here, or do you want to just do this voice?
I don't care. I just gonna read my question, okay?
Okay, cool.
So I said I have a trouble doing routines. It just doesn't seem to be good for me. Like I tried, but then I'm like, okay, I don't like the strawberry routine. I think I don't genuinely believe in it.
Yeah.
Or I don't like stuff. But then again, when I'm early in the evening and I say, hi, how are you doing? And then I literally have nothing else to say.
Yep.
Like, and I just want to, is it okay to say, okay, I don't have anything to say, tell us, or...
All right, we need everybody on the chat to mute themselves if you're not Arnie. But you were wondering, what do you say?
Yeah, I was just like, is there any cool way to get over that when you're just blank, when you're like, hi,
Yeah.
and you even get a smile or something, but then it's like, oh, well, I could ask her where she's from, but she probably heard that 50 times tonight, and like...
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I understand how you don't like routines. A lot of guys don't like routines. They are, they're training wheels for guys, really, and they're not the way that you want to interact. Like the purpose they serve is to help guys who are very awkward, very anxious, get over the idea of starting a conversation with a stranger, and I think they're good for that. But once you get over that, you want to not necessarily be using those things. So I don't advise anybody who has to use routines, let's say more than 2 or 3 times, let's say, to practice or to get over a psychological barrier that they have. But when you're starting a conversation, here's the thing. The one thing I say to all my students: you can open with whatever you like. You can open with anything, okay? Except for one. There's one line that you're not allowed to use. All right, and that is, "Hey, what's up?" Okay, "Hey, what's up?" is not starting a conversation with a woman. It is saying, "Hi, I have nothing to say. Will you please say something interesting to me?" All right. So when you start, you have to break out of that default conversational thing of being like, "So do you have anything to say?" Like, that's not good. So you can't say, "Hey, what's up?" You can't say other things that are like, "Hey, what's up?" Such as, "Hi, how are you? How's it going? Are you having fun? What's up?" And guys will always, like, you'll catch yourself saying, "Hey, what's up?" over and over and over again. And the secret is just say anything but that. You can say, "It's cold." But now you're saying something, right? There's actually communication going on there. Rather than just asking people to give you something. So that would be my, you don't have to use lines, but that anxiety, you're not getting over the anxiety, you're not getting past that starting the conversation barrier, because you're approaching with the one line that every dude who doesn't have anything to say uses, and that's the one thing that women dislike the most. And if you just say anything else, if you just express something from inside yourself rather than asking for something, you're gonna find women react way better to you, and you're learning something, right?
Okay.
Because you're not building your communication skills by going, "Hey, what's up?" to a lot of women. right? You're saying you're reinforcing a bad habit. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
I think.
Is there a way out to say okay, I'm really nervous? Like, can I even say that? Like,
yes.
Shit, I'm really nervous.
You can say exactly what you're feeling in that moment, and that will be infinitely better and infinitely more interesting, because there's nothing interesting about, hey, what's up, right? It is the opposite of all interesting things.
I've always said.
So just saying how you're feeling is fine. That's way better.
I've always said that the bare minimum of what you can say, the very bare minimum, is going to be honesty, and hopefully it can be confident honesty. So honesty in and of itself is always better than saying what Chris said, which is essentially throwing the ball in their court and being like, I don't know what to do with this. Here, you say something. Honesty in and of itself is better than that. Honesty isn't necessarily going to get attraction. If you go up to a girl and just say, I had diarrhea as I thought about trying to come and talk to you. I'm really nervous. Like she's probably going to be like, okay. But that's still better probably. You're still going to get a better almost reaction from that than just going up and being like, hey, what's up?
Even if a woman thinks you're really hot, and you walk up to her and say, hi, how are you doing? She's going to go, she's going to do the same thing back to you. Fine. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Fine. And then you're like, I guess we both don't have anything
to say.
So you're putting her, you're giving her anxiety when you say that, right? You're putting her on the spot now. So you just reverse it. And saying like, hey, you look interesting. What's your name? That's infinitely better. Because you're actually saying something. You're saying, I think you look interesting. And there's something there.
Some really basic questions you can use that are... Is he on this camera or on this camera? I don't know which one.
He's watching us from that camera, but everybody on YouTube is watching us on the other.
A couple things you can do if you actually are running, like you just can't think of anything to say. What you can do is you can actually use your normal kind of stack I think most guys have of questions they ask women when they don't know what to say. So these are things like, where you're from, why are you here, what's your background, why are you guys out tonight, all those sorts of things. But just instead of asking those questions, just make a statement about them. So instead of saying, oh, why are you guys out tonight? Instead you could say something like, so why are you guys out tonight? Let me guess. You're getting drunk and you're taking care of her and it's your birthday or something. Or so what do you guys aren't from Berlin, are you? You guys are giving me like a Austrian kind of vibe, something like that. Where you, instead of asking them that same question, you're just taking it and making it 10 times more interesting just by making a statement about it. It doesn't have to be anything that even makes sense.
Because all of a sudden when you make a statement, you're communicating something about yourself and the way you think. So you're sharing a bit of your character. Whereas a question, you don't share anything about yourself. You're
also sharing I guess, something about, like, in terms of how they may have come across to you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like your interpretation of what they're like. So not only are they getting a piece of you, but they're also getting a piece of themselves. So through the lens of you. So this is why it's like even something so simple as that, saying like, you guys are not giving me a Toronto vibe. I'm getting kind of a East Coast vibe from you guys. Even though you may have just wanted to say, so where are you guys from? Just saying it that way, it's all of a sudden probably one of the more interesting questions or statements they've heard that night. So
it doesn't have to be true. You don't have to be right, for example.
Yeah.
You say you girls look Canadian, they're not Canadian. It doesn't matter. It leads into a conversation. It gives them something to react to.
Yeah,
right?
even if they're not,
without just giving you another question mark back, which is basically
they're gonna wonder why you guessed that, even if it's not true. One of the things that women think about the most are how they're coming across to everyone else, right? It's why they spend so much time getting ready. It's why a lot of the gossip that goes around in their social circles relates to that sort of thing. So, what's going on here? Anyway, so that's what I'd say. It's only a problem if you think it's a problem. It's very easy to get out of that situation. It just takes a bare minimum of creativity to turn those boring questions into statements.
But thank you so much for calling in, Arnie. Sorry if I was harsh with you on that one, but it's a super common question. We get it all the time, and the real rule is no. Hey, what's up? It's one of the firm rules I try to instill in guys because it does make a big difference. It's a bad habit.
All right, thanks for the advice.
Thanks so much for calling in.
Thanks,
Sure.
Arnie.
All right, Arnie, that calling in from Germany, and if you guys, we are still taking questions. So if you guys want to participate, if you want to ask questions live on the show, you can still submit your question, and all you got to do is click on the Google Hangouts link, and we will have Sarah, our assistant, will talk to you, get your question, get you ready to go, and we will put you. You can ask your question live on the show. So it's going to be pretty cool. But yeah, thanks a lot, Arnie, for participating and asking a question. That was a great question.
Great question. Do we have another question? Are we going to go to another call-in, or are we going to a question?
I'm gonna share
Okay.
my anxiety. This is very personal,
Okay.
right? I have a weakness. I have an Achilles heel, and it is that I am afraid of heights. It and this guy freaking torments me with it. All right. So why don't you tell a story of how you used my anxiety to make me feel awful?
I get a kick out of people that are scared of things, and me personally, as someone who is drawn to things that scare him, and I get a certain excitement out of things that scare me. I recognize when other people are scared, and I want to almost let them feel the same thrill that I get when they can deal with their fear. So I purposely create situations to make them heighten their fear in already scary situations. So there's been a couple with Chris. Chris is afraid of heights. As you may or may not know, Toronto is home to the CN Tower, which is one of the tallest structures in the world. It was the tallest at one point. And when you go to the top of the CN Tower, take an elevator up, and they have the observation deck where they have glass floors, where you can stand on the glass floor and look down and see all the way down to the streets and the tiny little cars going by right under your feet. And Chris really took a lot of willpower to even get 1 foot onto the glass. And Chris is, to his credit, he knows when he's scared of something and really wants to get over it. So he purposely puts himself in situations. He's a brave guy. He puts himself in situations where he has to deal with his fear whenever he can. And to his credit, he does do that. But of course, me being an asshole, that's not good enough. It's not good enough that he just puts himself in a situation. He has to really deal with the fear. So in this situation on the CN Tower, Chris got both feet and even ventured into the middle of the glass. Very proud of himself. So of course, what I do in that moment is to jump on the glass as hard as I can, trying to break the glass so that we both fall to our death. And Chris did not like that very much.
No, I didn't like that at all. But you always do that. You always do that to me because the other story is like on my birthday when you were like, you like surprised me. You're like, surprise! I got you parachuting, and I was and like
parasailing.
No, we went parasailing, but you convinced me on my birthday that in front of everybody that you had bought me parachuting lessons, and I was like, oh great, my birthday present, parachuting lessons. And I was like, oh God, I'm gonna have to do this. Like, I don't want to freaking do this. And he's like, just kidding. And of course, I already looked like everybody in the room had seen that my face go white and me look completely unhappy. And Derek just chuckles to himself. But Derek also has a weakness, and
is it bats?
Yeah, bats.
Yeah, I don't like bats.
So Derek,
I gotta fear bats.
When we were in Australia, we like. I remember I took the camper van.
Yeah.
And I went because they've got these trees that are just like totally full of bats, like big giant like fox-sized fruit bats.
They're flying foxes.
Flying foxes, and they're just this tree that's just like covered with them. They're like,
and like
they're just like chirping and I drove real slow by them, and you're like, Derek like rolls up the window.
Yeah, it's not. I don't like bats. And in Australia, like Chris said, they got these gum trees and stuff. They don't have much foliage on them, so you can see all the bats hanging out in them. And they're close enough to the road that you can see how big they are. And they're literally like from foot to top of the head this big. They're like cats with leather wings. And oh God, I did not like them. And even in Sydney, the big city in Australia, at night. They're just flying over, and apparently these flying foxes, which is what they're called, they're not even local to Australia. They just got introduced and then just took over, and they live in like the.
You think they could take over Toronto?
If you introduce them, it's probably too cold here. But apparently they're.
You think there's a risk?
Yeah, definitely. Wait, I wanted to say though, there's the other thing. So I mentioned this. We actually went parasailing in Australia as well.
Okay.
And we went in. So parasailing is when you get latched up. This was an in tandem one. So me and Chris sitting in seats, get a parachute in a boat, and they drive the speedboat, and it air lifts you up, and you're way up high. So when we were up in this parachute thing, which again I was very proud of Chris for dealing with this fear. He didn't even oppose it that much. I said, let's go parasailing in Sydney Harbour, and there was only 2 seconds before he agreed to do it, where I saw the blood come out of his face. But he did agree to do it. We did do it. So when we went up there, of course I couldn't just let Chris do parasailing and have that be the end of it. So of course once we're up there, I'm unscrewing the screws attaching us to the.
Grabbing the bolts and like trying to rattle them
and shaking it, trying to break us out of there.
I was gonna punch you.
Yeah, Chris was getting
I
really
was
upset.
like,
Chris was this isn't even a prank
out of
anymore.
line.
This is like literally a fear for my life.
Yeah.
But then luckily the guy though that driving the boat did.
I don't think you can just take.
No.
I don't think you can just unscrew the.
Well, that's what I was hoping for. Otherwise, I would have been the one to have mud on my face, egg on my face in that one.
Turns out it's easy to crash.
Anyway,
all right, we got a question. We got Chuck on here. Chuck, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, we got Chuck. All right.
Hey, Chuck.
What was your question?
Hey, Derek.
You sound.
Before I have my question, it's not really a question, it's more of a statement.
All right.
Derek, about the bats. Have you seen the movie The Birds?
The Birds, the Hitchcock film, yeah, of course.
The Birds game?
Yeah, it was like Tippi Hedren or
amazing.
something. Yeah.
Are you scared of that?
No, I'm not scared of birds. I don't mind birds so much. It's bats. The thing with bats is that they're so actually this is the real reason. When I was a kid, there was a tree at my grandmother's house that had a lot of bats, and I had long curly hair as a kid. And you know that you always hear that story like moms maybe tell you like, oh, bats get stuck in your hair or whatever. And I always thought that was just like a made up thing. But I literally got a bat stuck in my hair, my curly hair, and I didn't think it was really in there. Although my cousins were like, oh my God, there's a bat in your hair. I went to go take it out, and I just felt this like leathery, hairy thing that was like going nuts in my hand and bit my hand several times. And I just threw it on the ground, and it like exploded, like it died. And I vomited, and that was like the worst shit of my life when I was a kid. And I just ran.
I shouldn't be laughing at that.
No, you should be. I thought it was funny.
Okay.
In hindsight, I think it was funny, but it really severely traumatized me as a kid. So that's why I hate bats. They're just like slimy, and I grabbed it. I could feel bones breaking in my hand as I grabbed it, and it was like biting me, and it's just disgusting.
Well, that sounds really traumatizing, Derek.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to us.
Not really, but whatever.
Yeah.
So my story is that I was out for dinner one time, and I can't remember what we were out for, but it was a big family thing, and then there was this table that there were these people having their birthday, and so there was a bunch of girls, and like some had boyfriends and whatever, and blah blah blah. So throughout the night, I'd get up and kind of walk to the bathroom or walk wherever, and kind of look over and scope it out or whatever. And then at the end, I was like anxiety the whole night, and I was like, oh fuck, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna say? Whatever. And then as I was walking out, I was just like, you know what, fuck it. So I walked over and was like, hey, sorry to bug you guys on your clear birthday, whatever, but I just wanted to say that I think you are really beautiful and have a wonderful birthday and blah blah. Like it was more just like an open and eject, just to kind of get over that. And that's what it was. And like there were guys at the table that like literally their mouths just dropped open and they were like clapping as I was leaving the restaurant. So like it's not like it's it was really just a normal thing just to get over that, but it's like nobody does that. Like if you can get over your approach anxiety and like legit walk up to somebody, then it generally works out better than you would think it might.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anxiety protects. I mean, it's something people do to protect themselves, right? But it controls people. I mean, there's so much stuff that doesn't happen because of anxiety, and like a lot of. I mean, succeeding in anything risky, such as business, such as sports, such as dating, requires confronting anxiety, and it actually is not as hard as all this stuff is not as hard as you would think it would be, precisely because 90% of the population doesn't try this stuff because of anxiety. 90% of the population does not try to start their own business because of anxiety. And 90% of guys do not try to date the most beautiful women because of anxiety. So it's helpful. It makes things less competitive for you if you can confront that.
Yeah.
Right? So that's awesome that you did that, man.
Yeah, man, that's good. I think that's a situation that comes up with everyone that does this for long enough. They get a story like that, and it's one of those things that the more you do it, the more you realize, wait a second, this isn't actually something that should have a lot of guilt or shame around it. Even when you're in a situation where you think, oh, here's 2 women that are with 2 guys or 3 guys even, out for dinner. There's no way this is going to go well. But you can go up and say something very honestly and confidently and have those guys cheering for you. Who knows? Maybe they're, they're cousins, Maybe they're more than likely they're cousins or they're workmates or they're, maybe the guy that really likes her but's never made a move or whatever. And they're going to applaud your confidence in that situation. And it happens all the time. It's less, I think there's too much, I guess, stuff that goes on in guys' heads where they think, this situation looks like it could be bad for me, therefore it is. And it's the completely wrong way of looking at it. Perception is reality, which I always say. But if you think a situation is going to go badly, and you go in with that belief, more often than not, it's going to go badly. Only because that's the communication you're sending out. It has nothing to do with the logic of it necessarily. It has to do with the beliefs you have going into it. There's a great story or anecdote I heard from a client one time that I've written about before, where he was in university and it was his first day of class, and it was a big class. It was like first year psychology or something, so it was like 200, 300 people in this big stadium style seating of a class. And he wanted to make a good impression on the professor because it was a professor that was in his it was a professor he had for like 4 different classes, so he knew he was going to make a relationship with him over the course of the year. So he sat right up front and brought his laptop and opened it up, or brought it on his thing, and the class, sort of started. The professor came up, and the guy opened up his laptop, and loud porn is playing because he was watching porn earlier and didn't, forgot to turn it off.
It happens to everybody.
Of course. And loud porn blasting through the stadium. He's in the front row. Everyone looking down sees exactly what's on his screen. It's just blasting. Of course, as soon as it happens, snickering, laughing, oh my God, gasps in the classroom. And when he was telling me this, he said, I had 2 options at that point. It's my first class, my first day of university. I can be the guy, the weird guy that had porn, got really embarrassed, or I could be the guy that owned it. And he said, I decided to be the guy that owned it. So he just turned around with a big shit-eating grin on his face, and he said, oh yeah, guys, that's just a startup sound for Windows 7, or whatever Windows it was at the time. And everyone laughed. They all burst out laughing. Even the professor was kind of like, ha ha ha. Okay, guys, settle down. Let's get to class. And from that point on, even after class, he said, guys are coming up to me like, dude, that was hilarious. And it just goes to show you, a logical situation like that where a lot of guys would think, oh my God, that would ruin me. That would be the worst thing that ever happened to me. But it has nothing to do with what actually happened. It has everything to do with how you decided to deal with it in that moment. Mm-hmm. And that was the big takeaway for him. And it should be for all you guys that see these situations. It's not about, is this situation bad or good? It's about, how am I coming into it? And how am I going to make it good or bad? And that's I think the real lesson there when it comes to anxiety. How is your anxiety going to control you? How are you going to try to control the situation and bring more anxiety? Or how are you just going to be like, you know what, this is a situation that's going to happen, fuck it, I'm just going to have fun with it. And I think when you can do that, that's what transcends it into not just a shitty situation, but something you can learn from, if not make positive. So
awesome. Thank you so much for calling in, Chuck, and thank you so much for asking your question. We've got some more stuff.
Yes.
We got some more questions from Sarah. So these were entered via text, and we got Brent wants to know, what if you make a statement and they turn it around on you? So going back to a few minutes ago, we were talking about, instead of asking questions like, hey, what's up? You want to give a statement. What if they turn it back on you?
So what's the example of this? Like, you say, like, oh, where are you guys from? You could give me like an East Coast vibe, and they say,
no, I'm not from the East Coast. I'm from right here in Toronto. Where the hell did you get that idea?
So in those situations, there's always 2 kind of conversations going on. There's the conversation of what the face people are wearing. So it's kind of like, oh, I'm a guy that doesn't know this person. I'm trying to start a conversation with them. Let's see if they open up to me. And then there's like the real sort of face that's going on. Like, I'm just a regular person and they're just a regular person and whatever. So not to make this too convoluted, but if I went up to a girl a woman and said that and said, oh, you guys are giving this East Coast vibe, and they said, no, we're not East Coast, from Toronto. Why would you ask that? That, to me, is a strong indication that I need to get to the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is going to be, why are they reacting in that way, to me, is the reality of the situation. And so that's the reaction I'm going to give. It's not a reaction that has to relate to what they said, but it has to do with how they reacted. So probably what I would say to that, I'd be like, are you guys okay? Are you guys having an okay night? What's going on? That's probably how I would react to that. Because that is a socially almost inappropriate way to react.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that's how I'm going to treat it. Not in a negative, pouty way.
And that's a good thing for guys who are concerned about women, let's say, reacting, being mean to them or reacting poorly. You can always take the high ground and be like,
that's
strange. That's a strange reaction.
Yeah.
I hope you have a better, I hope you have a better day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. And that's actually what a confident guy would do. That is the confident response to it when somebody is rude to you inappropriately. Especially because you're controlling yourself. You're giving off a fun energy.
Yeah.
She's coming back with negativity. What's going on?
Yeah.
You're having a good time? You go up a level.
That's right.
Right? You don't respond at the same level that she's speaking at. You go up a level to talk about the subtext of the conversation. Be like, okay, that was an odd reaction. What's going on?
If they ante up, so you're going up, and then let's say you say, "Are you guys okay? What's going on tonight? Are you guys having a rough night?" And they say, "Why the hell would you say that? What's wrong with you? Why are you talking to us?" At that point, I'm not going to keep going, right? So at that point, I'm like, all right, you guys have a good night, and I'll just walk away. Mm-hmm. Because it's not worth getting into an interaction like that. What are you really going to get? You don't. Yeah.
Really negative, yeah.
Really, really super negative. And there probably is something going on there that you couldn't possibly cut through. So either they just had a really bad interaction, their friend got in trouble, or their boyfriend cheated on them, who knows, right? And in those situations, it's best to just cut it out and just go somewhere, talk to someone who's going to be a bit more positive.
Okay, we got another question, and that is your anxiety attached to your self-worth? Is anxiety related to self-esteem? That's a good question.
I think you can make the argument, definitely. I think that there's different types of anxiety, different forms of it. I think some of it certainly definitely would be tied to your own insecurities.
I think insecurity can make your anxiety worse. They're not exactly the same thing.
I know.
Certainly anxiety can be about stuff that has nothing to do with your self-esteem. So if you're afraid of nuclear radiation, that probably has nothing to do with your self-esteem. Sorry, if you're anxious about that.
If you're a short guy and you're anxious about talking to women that are taller than you,
mm-hmm.
it's something that I dealt with when I was younger, then that can be something where a normal-looking girl, a regular girl, but she's an inch taller than me, 2 inches taller than me, all of a sudden I'm going to get anxiety because I'm going to assume that she doesn't like me because I'm shorter than her. And something I learned very early on is that it has nothing to do with your height and everything to do with how you react to that. That difference.
Yeah.
So there are situations.
I would say if you had self-esteem problems, if you had low self-worth, what would happen is you'd be more likely you'd think that a bad reaction is more likely than it is.
Yeah.
You'd expect to get rejected or be treated rudely more likely than it's actually is to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you would think that rejection would be more important. It would be more dangerous. So you feel less control, and the fear, the danger, seems higher when you have that low self-worth. However, you can still be really anxious and actually not have low self-esteem. Because I know guys who, we definitely get guys who do not have low self-esteem. They are, they think quite highly of themselves, yet they are extremely anxious in social situations just because they perceive the risk, right? Just because they feel like they're gonna, something bad is gonna happen, even if they think that they're a great person. They just think that other people are going to judge them really hard. They're very afraid mm-hmm. that when they walk up and say, "Hey, you look interesting. I'm Chris," the girl's going to go, "What the hell?" Pepper spray him, and then he's going to wind up on the front page of the newspaper the next day as some sex offender because he told some girl she was pretty or something like mm-hmm. that, right? And if you think that way, if that's a reality that you have, because maybe you haven't gone out and done this stuff in real life and realized women like being approached as long as they're approached the right way, as long as they're approached with the right attitude. If you think that way, even if you have a high self-esteem, you're going to experience a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
So I would not say that it has too close of a correlation with
I would say here's an interesting thing to think about. If you have anxiety, personal anxiety is about things that relate to, let's say, your height, maybe your race, these things that you think are actually really deal killers. Maybe you're an Asian guy that thinks that white girls don't like Asian dudes, or you're a short guy that thinks that tall girls won't like you, and it makes sense to you because you see it in the media and you see examples of it on your social your online and stuff like that. But here's the thing. Here's a situation maybe you've all been through. I know that I have, and I know Chris has as well. Have you ever talked to a woman who, maybe you're in a foreign country and you're traveling, or maybe you're in a city that has a lot of multiculturalism, and she doesn't speak very good English, and you misinterpret that as disinterest, right? So you're talking to a girl, she says, "Oh, no, sorry, not very good English." And you take that as like, "Oh, this girl doesn't want to talk to me." That's kind of the opposite. That's how you're being perceived when you go up with these insecurities. Because in those situations, those women, especially if they're, let's say, like in Toronto, it's a pretty big multicultural city. If you're someone who doesn't speak good English in Toronto or any American city, you're at a disadvantage, and they know that. So they want to talk to you, but they're insecure because they don't speak good English. And that gets misinterpreted as them not liking you. And you think they don't like you. But the truth is they do, or at least they're open to it. It's just that they're insecure because they don't speak the language that well. And you can turn that into a really easily positive situation in which there is attraction there. But often guys don't because they misinterpret it. That's how you're coming across when you go in with those insecurities. You're pushing people away, and they're getting that. They're getting the message, and they're saying, "Oh, this person doesn't like me, so I guess I don't want to talk to them." When you go up to them and you say, like, "Oh, I'm short, this person isn't going to like me," you communicate that, and they sense it. They pick up on that, and they think, "Okay, well, if he doesn't want me to like him, then I won't like him," and they push you away. The same way you probably feel blown out when a woman that doesn't speak good English says that, "Oh, sorry, I don't speak English."
All right, we got a good question here.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one. We got Ken is asking.
Kenny boy.
He says, "All right, Jezebel, which is a feminist blog, says you shouldn't approach women. Period. All right, shouldn't approach it at all.
Yeah.
So, how how can you so I guess how can you approach confidently when there are a lot of people who believe you shouldn't do that at all?"
So is this that they don't agree with the idea of approach, and that guys, with painting with a wide brush should not approach? Or do they actually mean men should never approach women in any situation?
I think...
Or is this like a PUA thing?
I don't think there's any real internal logic to the position.
It's a bit absurd.
And I think the position is that they don't like you. Men are horrible people regardless of what they do.
Right.
And I do think actually the idea I think the idea that some people present is that you should always ask permission before you speak to anyone, which I absolutely reject philosophically and ethically. Because first of all, you can't even ask the permission without, of course, speaking to the person. Second of all, it creates for a fractured, lonely, bitter society where you're living your life on your tiptoes, trying to avoid offending people who are actually the most miserable people on earth, and you're trying to you have to live your life a certain way to prevent their self-esteem from being triggered, basically.
So my question then would be something like this. Do they disagree with the idea that being brazen about something is an attractive, if not admirable, quality, right? And if they're saying that no, or they're saying, oh, it's not about being brazen, it's just about women, they should have a choice and whatnot. Well, I would say, if you're taking that approach to it, is someone who's asking for a raise from his boss and being confident without permission,
mm-hmm.
is that somehow taking away from the boss? Should the boss be offended by that? Or should he respect that?
Does Jezebel,
mm-hmm.
did they ask my permission before they wrote an article on my job? I don't think they did.
They're being very
Everybody needs to ask my permission before they do anything. That's That's the end of it.
When you get down to the logic of it, the whole thing falls apart because there is no logic to it.
Well, there is no logic to it. Here's the thing: you should not treat women poorly. You should not go out with a bad attitude. You should not go out with a negative attitude inside yourself and be rude to people or be a pest or anything like that. Everybody agrees with that. Nobody should do stuff like that. But the problem with that whole worldview is the entire ethical system that this worldview is built upon is totally fraudulent. All right, and the fact is, your motivations, people know this. Your motivations determine. Your motivations affect the ethics of what you do. Mm-hmm. If you're going out with a positive intention to be friendly, to meet people, to create a connection with people, you are doing a good thing. You will do a good thing. All right? It is not... and if you go out with negativity, you will do a bad thing. Even if nobody is immediately harmed by what you're doing, you're creating negative karma for yourself. You're going out with bad intentions, and you are not acting virtuously. And the mindset, the philosophical system that sort of Jezebel style philosophy and complaining is built upon is based off the idea that your intentions don't matter at all. If it's all about the effect. If somebody, even if that person is just a complete child and has no real and is a complete fragile childish ego, if somebody feels bad from what you did, even if it's their own hallucination, it's your fault. And your intent doesn't matter whatsoever. It doesn't matter if you are trying to be the nicest person in the world, if you're trying to help somebody, if you accidentally say something that they think is sexist, then you have committed an egregious sin. And of course, that makes you anxious because you have a threat, you have a danger of social condemnation, of being socially outcast. But you also have no control over it because the crime is committed inside the head of a crazy person, a legitimately crazy person oftentimes.
The victim.
Yeah, of someone with a victim mentality.
Yeah.
And you have that fear, and you have that, and you have that lack of control. And there's nothing you can do about it as long as you buy into that mindset. But when you buy into a mindset where you control the factors, when you control whether or not you are being ethical at any given time, through your intention, then you can feel confident because you know that you're trying to do good. Mm-hmm. And that's what matters. And by the way, people intuitively judge one another based off of this, right? We might, in university, have learned some sort of ethical system that says things otherwise. But at the end of the day, what people like is integrity and people who have good intentions. That's what we read. That's why we make excuses for people sometimes when they do bad things. So we go, oh, he has good intentions. That's why he's you're seeing things wrong. But sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. Sometimes we make excuses for people who are legitimately dickheads. Yeah. But we do that because we know intuitively that your intention matters. And even I study law. Like, the difference between murder and
manslaughter?
Murder and manslaughter and a traffic ticket is your intention, right? If you don't intend to kill somebody, you cannot be charged with murder, because we know that it's the intent that determines the ethical nature of an act.
This is like the question that Chris has been waiting his whole career to answer. This is great. I just want to finish that by saying I don't think if Jezebel really did say that.
That is all postmodernist philosophy destroyed right here on a live stream. Okay, I just destroyed there's 10,000 academics that I just destroyed their entire life's work.
I don't even understand how this even gets brought up, because to me it's like, I don't want to get too far into this, but to me it's like, okay, if you say, men should never approach women.
Upvotes.
That idea in and of itself is kind of absurd, because even if you asked them, if you said, so does that mean gay guys shouldn't talk to women that are maybe see as they could be their friends? They'd probably be like, oh, no, I just mean guys looking to pick up women or something. It's like, okay, so that's what you're really saying. But even then you can narrow it down to what they're really saying, right? So yeah.
And even then, it's like they're going to your intent, which is like
the
sleazy guys who want to get laid shouldn't talk to people, but friendly guys who want to have a good time should.
Are you saying men and women can't be friends?
I can understand that. If you go out with a need to get laid kind of vibe, women pick up on that and they don't like you. You're not that much fun. Don't do that. But if you go out with we always go out with we like messing with people. We're trying to have fun. We're trying to bring a positive vibe. People like that. That's the root of our success.
There's a spectrum.
It's not
you can't ignore the spectrum. On the far end of the spectrum, very bad things happen. Men should not approach women with that intent. The rest of the spectrum is okay.
All right, we got some more. Boom. We got some. How do you escalate from the friend zone? What do you do about the friend zone? Let's keep it related to anxiety, though.
Okay.
We got to stay on topic, folks.
So I would say the friend zone I mentioned in the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes of this episode, the friend zone, in terms of anxiety anyway, there's a lot we can talk about friend zone, but in terms of anxiety, it's the escalation anxiety. It's the anxiety about taking the friendly interaction to go more. And if you wait too long, if that anxiety persists for too long, it's a door that you have. There's a window there that you can do it in. And if you pass by it, it's too late. The best thing you can do is not see her for 6 months to a year and then try again. So hopefully we'll reopen that window. But if you have escalation anxiety and you have a friendly interaction with someone and it stays friendly and you never make a move in order to let her know your true intent, that's when you get stuck in the friend zone. And at some point down the line when you had too many drinks or you're alone with her, you let your intent be known, usually by making a move that comes across very awkward, and she gets upset because she's like, what are you doing? You feel slighted because you put in the work, and it makes for a very shitty situation in which you deserve because you didn't have the confidence of the balls to actually communicate your intent, which you should always do. So so that I would say is how it relates to anxiety. If the question is how do you get out of the friend zone, the answer is you can't. It's a black hole. The real answer is that you need to stop seeing them, like I said, for like 6 months to a year. Enough time for you can change and you can reset the relationship a little bit. And then after 6 months to a year, you see her again, and then you gotta the intent has to be communicated pretty quickly, if not the first time you see her, so that she can see this is the new you. The new you is the guy that communicates your intent, and that's usually how I deal with it.
All right. So we got another question. What are some exercises? What's something somebody could do right now to confront their anxiety?
I always said do stuff that you're scared to do. Me and Chris do this all the time. We love doing things that scare us, as you've already heard from the stories we've told, but things that we make our clients do, things like going to karaoke nights, like literally karaoke nights that are open karaoke, so not like the private, Asian karaoke, but the open, you gotta sing in front of a bunch of strangers karaoke, and you gotta sing a song. And the reason is not because we want you guys to make an ass of yourselves and entertain us, although that is part of it. It's because you need to be put in a situation in which whether you succeed or not actually has less to do with your abilities and more to do with your own sort of your lack of fear, you're letting it go, essentially. Karaoke, exactly.
Being
disinhibited. Karaoke, exactly the same as attracting women, in that it has less to do with how good looking you are, or in karaoke's case, how good of a singer you are, and more to do with how much fun you're having. And you've probably noticed this if you've been to karaoke. It's not the best singers that are the best shows. It's the guys that or women that have the most fun. They don't even need to be good singers, but if they're having fun and they're enjoying and they don't give a crap, that's an entertainment. So karaoke, improv. Go to some improv shows where you get to actually go on stage or whatever, or actually take improv classes, even better. Open mic nights. What else? What are some more things that we get guys to do that are really scary? Dance classes. Anything that frightens you, where you got to put yourself in a position where eyes are on you and you got to do something. I think dancing is kind of similar in that there's an ability there.
I mean, the key is with anxiety, it's confronting your anxiety. It is exposure therapy. It is not hiding from your anxiety. A lot of people you can make yourself more anxious by saying oh, you know what. Social situations or talking to women makes me anxious, so I am going to avoid that. And what happens when you do that is your brain goes when you experience anxiety and you pull away from it, your brain thinks you just saved your life. It reinforces the behavior. So if you're afraid of talking to somebody, you're like, all right, I'm gonna go talk to that person. Oh no, I'm not. All right, I'm gonna go back and drink. Your brain goes, whew, we just saved it. Like,
Nice
we just got
call.
out of that risky situation, man. Wow, good thing we didn't go over and talk to that person. That would have been terrible. It reinforces the behavior because your brain, you get that feeling of relief from abandoning your anxiety, and it reinforces it. And instead, you got to do the opposite. You've got to, when you feel that anxiety, you have to confront it, even if it's just a tiny little bit, right? Even if it's just, and a lot of guys they go, "Oh, this is pointless. It's pointless confronting this anxiety because I'm not really going to get the goal that I'm getting. But the goal should be just to mess with your anxiety, fuck your own anxiety, and you got to. So you might be in an awkward situation. And you're like, okay, I'm just gonna go over and say hi to this person. I'm gonna go ask them the time. I'm gonna say I'm just gonna say, hey, you look interesting. What's your name? I'm just gonna do that. Then I'll come back. But as long as you push through it, it breaks that reinforcement of the anxiety and reduces your anxiety. But whenever you let anxiety control you, you make it stronger. And this is it's tough. It's a tough situation, especially for people who have a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, I mean, as any Canadian boy probably understands, when you're a little kid and you're learning how to skate for the first time, how to learn how to play hockey, as all Canadians do, there's that. I remember when I was a kid, I'd see my dad, he could skate backwards, and him and his buds were playing on the ice. Eric, come on, let's go. And I put my skates on, and I get on the ice, and I slipped and fell and hit in the back of my head and cracked my head open. I had blood coming out and stuff. And that was my first experience with learning how to skate. And then, I came back on, a week later or whatever, and tried it again. And by the end of that winter, I could skate reasonably well. But a lot of guys, this is how it works. And they're like, okay, I want to learn how to talk to women. And they come out with us, or they see other guys, and they see these guys doing it and makeouts and all this sort of stuff. They're like, oh, I can't do that. I can't even get my foot in the ice without falling. And they're jumping to see the end goal as sort of the first step. And you just have to sort of see this as like, no, just like anything else, this is a skill you have to learn. And you're going to fall down. And you need to fall in love with that process, that learning. And there is a certain excitement and a certain positivity you get from every time you conquer one of these things you're so scared of. So every time you go back on the ice, you can skate a little bit faster. You learn a few more moves.
And that's a big thing. Overcoming anxiety is exhilarating. It's a lot of fun.
It is.
That's why, like somebody was saying, Chuck was telling a story about how he approached that woman and he got a high five from her friends. Right? That's because her friends saw that and they were like, "Whoa, it's exhilarating." Yeah. It's exhilarating to watch other people confront their anxieties. Like go on YouTube and check out GoPro videos or skiing videos and extreme sports videos. Why do people watch this stuff? Because you put yourself in the other person's position and you experience what they're experiencing in a safe environment, and you get that thrill, you get that rush. And you've got to one thing you got to do to get over anxiety is the best way to get over anxiety is to start to crave that thrill, to start to crave that rush, even if it's like little, even if it's something like a little bit trivial, right? That's fun, that's excitement. And that was when I started getting good, is when I was like, when I stopped seeing being social and pushing my boundaries as a chore that I had to do, but rather it was something exciting.
Yeah.
It was an adventure, and it was like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah, even failure is sometimes the most fun situations. It's kind of like, wow, I learned a lot from that situation, as opposed to just another night where it went really well. So just goes to show you we all right, so I think we're going to be finishing up here now.
Yeah.
I had a great time tonight. I think we got a lot of content out for you guys. We answered a lot of questions. I think we really covered the topic quite
I think we covered it super, super, super well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for everybody who called in. You guys are awesome. You're part of the reason why this is such an awesome little experience we got going on here every Monday at 8 p.m. Please, if you're just watching this for the first time, please subscribe so you can get notifications of this next time you are next time we are broadcasting. And if you click subscribe and turn on notifications, then you're gonna get an email from YouTube every Monday at 8 when we go live. and you're also going to get it. It's also going to pop up on your feed and stuff like that when you log into YouTube, so you can see the latest one. We're doing every Monday at 8 p.m. And also give this a like and share it around if you have some friends who have anxiety, let's say, or you have people where this stuff is holding them back. Ultra common, actually, I think one of the biggest sort of psychological, social problems that individuals face. I actually think I believe I read recently that anxiety is the number one mental illness. It's the number one cause of mental illness related trips to the doctor's office. Let's say number one complaint of people talking to a psychiatrist. So it's not rare at all, and it is something that you can deal with if you take the right mindset. Obviously, medicine has solutions too, not denying that. But there's the number one therapy is exposure therapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
For all this stuff.
Definitely. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Tune in next week where we'll have a topic that I'm not sure what it is yet, but
we don't know what the topic is going to be next week. It's going to be awesome. Masculinity was number 2. We did a Twitter poll to choose the topic of this one, and anxiety one. Masculinity was number 2, so we might talk about that one next. Should be a good one. And tune in every Monday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.